Good evening and welcome. My name is Olivia Carvalho, and I'm the Urban Outreach and Events Coordinator for Birds Canada. This webinar is brought to you by the Toronto Bird Celebration, a 2-week-long festival of events that happens all throughout the GTA and through online. The Toronto Bird Celebration would not be possible without the generous support of the amazing Birds Canada, TD Friends of the Environment Foundation, and Koa Optics, and our amazing partnering organizations that actually come together to put these events on. I'm going to invite you to use the Q&A function rather than the chat for your specific questions. Justin will be taking questions right at the end, and we'll be able to find them easier if you're using the Q&A rather than the chat. And with that, it's my pleasure to introduce Justin Peter, Director of Programs and Senior Naturalist for Quest Nature Tours. He is past president of the Toronto Ornithological Club, life member of the Ontario Field Ornithologists, and currently sits on the board of directors at Birds Canada. Justin regularly leads spring bird walks at Point Pelee National Park and is a longtime supporter of the Toronto Bird Celebration, where he generously gives his time for events, including this one tonight. Welcome, Justin.
Well, thank you so much, Olivia, and it's great to be back. I suppose I might be meeting some of you, or some of you.
We can't hear you.
Oh, do you hear me now?
Good to go.
Good to go. We hear me? Great. Thank you so much, Olivia. Thank you all for being here tonight. I suppose I met some of you, or I was speaking to some of you last week when we had some audio issues, and everything seems to be fine. And I'm glad to be back here to do my talk, Birding by Ear. Of course, it is spring. It's the time, I think, when we notice birds the most, especially bird sound. And I've been fascinated with bird sound for the better part of my life. I used to play piano when I was a kid. I was one of those children who was put perhaps involuntarily into music, into piano lessons, and not realizing at the time that it was an excellent thing. It turns out I was very inclined with my ear. I was very good with my ear, not so good with sight reading, and so my hearing has been a huge part of my birding experience. And tonight I'm really glad to share with you some tips and tricks, perhaps maybe some different ways to approach birding by ear that might help you to have a more enjoyable time out there in the field observing birds. And I say observing birds because a lot of just sort of an insider's let's say an insight here is that a lot of experienced birders, those who are more experienced, or who might be expert birders, they're kind of birding all the time when they're out in the field. They're and a lot of the observations that they're making, perhaps you might have heard, that someone saw 100 species in a day. Well, it's very hard to actually see 100 species of bird in a day, but if you're using your ears, identifying a bird by sound actually counts as an observation. So a lot of the time they're hearing birds out there in the field and just identifying them that way, and making a great or getting a good bird list in that sense. So birding by ear is certainly helpful for competitive birding, but it adds another element to everyone's enjoyment of the outdoors and of bird life. Bird sounds are really constitute a language, and birds are communicating different things through their vocalizations. We don't necessarily know what they always mean, but when you start to listen to birds, even the common birds, especially the most common birds, you start to learn the soundscape even just around your home. So listening to birds adds another element. And so today I hope to share with you some of what I think are ways to approach bird sound and learning to bird by ear, or getting better at it, feeling like you're getting better at it. I think it's very important. There are lots of challenges with birding by ear, however, and I hope you see them on my screen here. And you might identify with some, maybe one or all these challenges. And I would say that I can identify with all of them myself. when you're starting to bird by ear, a lot of bird sounds are similar from one species to the next. It's hard to distinguish one from the other. They may sound the same, and that goes especially for things like call notes that are simple ticks or chips that birds make for various reasons. They might be contact notes, one bird letting the other one of its kind know where it is. Those are very, very similar. So it's a challenge that's there. Now, the other challenge is that many birds have a very wide area of a large repertoire of vocalizations. So a lot of birds, I mean, all birds have some sort of especially songbirds have like contact calls. They'll have alarm calls. The young, the nestlings or fledglings that are just out of the nest, they'll have begging calls. Alarm calls can specify whether a predator, for example, is a ground predator, like a four-legged predator, or a flying predator, like a hawk. Then you have songs, and those are the sounds, typically more musical and typically made by male birds, especially in the breeding season, that set out a territory and also serve to attract a mate. So there's lots of different sounds that any one bird species makes, and so that in and of itself is hard. You may learn one of those sounds, and other sounds that they make less frequently are just new, and you might think that's actually a new species, but it's not. Another challenge that I'm told is prevalent is that, well, a lot of sounds are high pitched. So I'm very lucky. I feel lucky that I can hear very high pitched sounds, but I'm told that with time, our ability to hear high pitched sounds decreases. I know I face the challenge. I've seen this in real time with one of my younger colleagues in the field, and I think it's because of our age difference. He was hearing a great horned owl, which is a very low pitched sound. Who's awake? Me too. And I couldn't hear it right away. He said great horned owl, and I couldn't hear it right away. I thought, oh no, my hearing is going, or what is it? And if I really focused, then I could hear it, but it came very easily to him. So there are differences in our ability to just perceive some of the sounds. And the last challenge that is less of an issue these days, I think, because of apps like Merlin. But once upon a time, before smartphones and Merlin and such things, you would be out in the field, you'd hear a sound that you didn't recognize, you've never heard that sound before. It might actually be a common species, but you can't see the bird that's making the sound. And you try to approach with your binoculars looking like, can I see the bird that's making that mystery sound? And it could be that you don't see the bird. And then you have to try to remember what is it like? How does it, how can I remember what it sounds like? Either just so I remember it and it will come to me next time I hear it, or that I can look for it somehow, maybe online or somewhere else. And so it's hard. It can be hard to describe the sounds that we're hearing. That goes just for fact finding, for figuring out what it is, but also for learning and just remembering the sounds. Once you actually know what it is, to just learn it and find a way to remember it. As children, I'm told, we absorb things, and as adults, we have to actually make a certain effort to learn things. So these are all different challenges that are there. They're real, I think. And so today, what I'd like to do is to walk you through a number of exercises, I'll call them, that I hope will give you some tools to just think about bird sounds differently, and might give you a little something that you can use, take with you out into the field and help you learn. And what you'll find is that what I'm going to share isn't very scientific. It isn't. There is a science to bird sounds and bird vocalizations, but as adult learners, it can be hard unless you've specialized in audio recording or some similar field to know the lingo. So I'm going to share just really very basic, very sort of everyday language to describe bird sounds, because that's how I think, anyways, that we learn those. We just describe them for ourselves. And once you have that very basic language, then you can relate that sound to yourself. Like it'll just make sense to you, because once you start describing it. So without complicating that, I'll just share. This is what I like to do today. And for the most part, I like to spend our time describing bird vocalizations. And what that means is really finding that language and just hearing the sounds and describing the sounds, just simply describing the sounds with the everyday language, everyday words that we all have handy already without getting too specialized in it. And we'll have a little bit of practice, and then later I'll share a few resources that I think will be, I hope, are helpful for you in furthering, taking your birding by ear experience wherever you want it to take it. And so today, what I'll do, and I'll just qualify that when we're talking about bird vocalizations today, for the most part, I will be talking about bird song. I mentioned it before. Bird song is or sounds that mostly male birds are making. Most of the time, that bird songs are concentrated in the springtime. Why do I want to concentrate on those? That is because bird songs tend to be the longest sounds that songbirds are making. They're not just one note chip notes that are hard to learn. Bird songs give you enough time to listen, really listen to them. And they tend to be most musical and from one species to the next, the most distinctive. So they're most different from one bird species to the next. So that I think helps us to learn them and appreciate the differences and start to kind of build our own frame of reference for them. So I'll be talking mostly about bird songs. So we'll be describing bird vocalizations and practicing. And so moving now to actually describing bird sounds, I'll talk about these three main areas, and I'll try and build stepwise. It won't be just 1, 2, and 3. I'm going to talk about these things called color in quotation marks or tone. I'll explain what they are, color or tone, and then sort of using that, we'll build on that. We'll go to the next level, the next area of describing bird vocalizations, which is pattern. And then I'm going to add another layer, which is pitch. And so we're going to start with some language on step 1 and then use that same language and get other language for step 2 and then build towards pitch. So without dwelling on these ones, I'm going to talk about that first thing, which is color of the voice, or what I call tone. And I'm putting color here in quotation marks because it's not that the sounds that these birds are making are literally colored, that they have a color like red or blue or orange. But color to me, in quotation marks, what that means is really that unique quality that each bird song has that's particular to that species. In human terms, I will say that the best example I can give for those of us old enough to remember the group ABBA, the musical group ABBA from Sweden, you had those two women singers in the group who, when they sang together or solo, you just knew it was them. It was just the way their voices were, the way they combined. They could sing any other song that's not an ABBA song, and you would probably, if you're familiar with them, you would recognize that those are the singers. Those are the ABBA singers. There's just something about them that makes them distinctive, and we can't always pinpoint what that is, but it has a certain color of the voice. So, as examples of what I mean by color, I'm going to show you songs of 3 birds that are common in southern Ontario, and they have fairly wide ranges across North America. The American robin found all across North America below the tree line. So even if you're in BC right now, you'll have them out there. The rose-breasted grosbeak at the bottom here, which has a fairly wide range east of the Rockies. And then the scarlet tanager, which has a more limited range to eastern North American hardwood forests for the most part. Now, all of these birds, these 3 birds, are often described as having similar sounding songs. They're musical. This is my scientific language. They're musical, which means they're generally pleasant to the ear. They consist of short musical phrases. They have a bit of a swinging quality. The phrases have a bit of a swinging, lax or relaxed quality to them. So they sound pleasant. They're musical and they're pleasant, but they also have a relaxed quality about them. But they're all different from each other, and I'm convinced that by listening, you can compare them and hear that difference. Now, the American robin. I'm going to start with the American robin. I'm going to play the sound because it's the one I think most of us have heard, most distinctive. You probably have them waking you up at 4:30 in the morning, like I know I did this morning. Short musical phrases that has a sing-song, swinging quality, and I'll play it for you here, and just give it a listen. And it's pleasant, musical, clear whistle, nice clear whistle. And I hope you could hear that. Olivia, tell me if otherwise. That is the American Robin. Very pleasant swing. Like that. I'll play it one more time. Give it a listen. Then I'll play the next bird. Okay. Pleasant to hear, even if we don't like them in the early morning hours, but it's pleasant. It's a nice sounding song. Now I'm going to play the Scarlet Tanager, which is often compared to the American Robin. And now just give it a listen here. Oh, is it going here? Wait a second.
It seems to have frozen. Oh, we're good.
Okay, I'll give it one more try here. Okay, so I hope you all heard that, and it's pleasant. It's sort of swinging. It has short musical swinging phrases, but there's something different about it, and you might have noticed that it doesn't sound. What do you think? If I said it doesn't sound quite as smooth or as clear, doesn't have the clear sound to it. It sounds like there's something like it has something stuck in its throat. It sounds rough instead of like the robin is. It sounds like sometimes it's called a robin with a sore throat. So it has a burry quality. It's just rough. It's musical enough, but it's just rough. So it has a rougher sound to it. All right. So that's our highly scientific language. It just sounds kind of rough. It sounds rougher, not burry, rough, hoarse, maybe. All right. Now I'm going to play the rose-breasted grosbeak, often compared to the American robin. And give this one a listen. All right, so that's the male rose-breasted grosbeak, and it is, well, compared to the robin, perhaps you will have found the same. I will just say for me, what I'm hearing is it sounds it's rich, it's definitely musical, very pleasant, it's smooth, so it doesn't have any rough qualities like that Scarlet Tanager that I can really tell. It's but it sounds almost more musical than the robin. It has like a fuller throat, a richer sound than the robin. And one other thing that some of you, certainly those who are more musical among you, or claim to be, is that it also speeds up at the end. It doesn't have quite a meter, like an even meter, like the robin. It starts off, and it gets all kind of garbled at the end. Now that's like pattern and tempo. That's not exactly what I'm focusing on here. But I will make one point about the rose-breasted grosbeak. Whereas the Scarlet Tanager is compared to, it's called a robin with a sore throat. The rose-breasted grosbeak is often, I've read it said that it's like a robin who's taken voice lessons. And I can maybe see that. Personally, I disagree with that because because a robin the robin is very even and very well metered. If this was a robin with voice lessons, it would also stay even and keep an even tempo, and it doesn't do that. It sort of starts off even and it gets off track, kind of derailed. And to me, that's like it. The Rosebreasted Grosbeak is like a robin who's really supremely talented. He's like a born Pavarotti. He has really good voice, but he's a little bit cocky maybe, and he just kind of loses it and just starts doing, freestyling. He hasn't taken voice lessons yet. He's just so talented. He's like, I don't need lessons. That's how I would personally describe the Rosebreasted Grosbeak. So just a fuller sound, richer, and I'm going to play all of them now, one after the other, without discussing them. Just give you that opportunity to hear them once again, one after the other. So American Robin first. Okay, Scarlet Tanager. And the Rose-breasted Grosbeak. Great. There you go. So color of voice. That's our little venture in the color of voice. Now, I'm going to do another comparison here. I'm going to add a bit of a layer here, and we'll look at another example of color of voice. And I want to emphasize there's no like right or wrong answers, but based on our warm up with those three species we just looked at, I want to compare these two birds, which are possible to see during spring migration and also breeding in the appropriate habitat in Ontario. That's the blue-headed vireo on the upper left with nice white spectacles around the eyes here, and the yellow-throated vireo at the bottom here with yellow spectacles. And they both have a very similar song. And I'm going to describe it visually for those maybe who already read music, or maybe you can relate. But just to add in another element, they both have what we call a sort of a call and answer type of song. Not very scientific, right? Call and answer. What does that mean? Well, a call and answer is sort of it's when a bird makes short phrases and the inflection and the spacing sounds like there's actually two birds in conversation. One's asking a question and one's answering. So if we're looking at my very complex graph here that I made myself, moving in time from left to right, the first note, I think my pointer, I hope my pointer is showing here on the screen. Doo-doo, 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 doo-doo. And so they both have that sort of call and answer, but they have a different color of voice. And without telling you, like, I think one is sweeter or clearer, and one is rougher or less, a little bit less musical or less pleasant. I'm just going to play them both, and then you can judge which one you think is more musical and which one is kind of rougher. So blue-headed vireo first here. Okay, and I'm going to play the yellow-throated vireo. Oops. All right. So if you want to, you can plug it into the chat. You can tell me which one do you think, which one of these two you think is more musical, it has a clear voice, which one is a little bit rougher, doesn't have quite as clear of a voice. If you have a moment, I welcome you to do that. I'm seeing Abira is answering here. She's saying yellow-throated is a little rougher. Does anyone disagree with that? Ganesh is saying blue-headed vireo is clearer. Navir is also saying blue-headed vireo is sweeter. I agree with that. I personally, that's what I was thinking. Nadia saying, I agree. So one is, they both have, almost the same pattern. And if you heard that at a distance and recognize like that's one of those species, you might have to kind of focus in and move a little closer. But once you get on it, you can kind of see, yeah, one's sweeter, one's less sweeter. And so that's basically what I mean. Sweet, clearer, rough, hoarse, or throatier. Those are legitimate words you can use to describe those sounds to yourself. Now, one little thing I didn't tell you, and it's not in this recording of the blue-headed vireo, a giveaway of the blue-headed vireo is it often has a sneeze note in its call and answer. So it'll go dee 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 achoo dee. It is probably the spring pollen from the trees that are flowering like today. And Glenda's asking if I can play them one more time. I will do that. I'll get them set up here. I'll play the blue-headed vireo and then the yellow-throated. Blue-headed vireo first. Okay, and now the yellow-throated vireo. There we go. Call and answer in a different color of voice, just a different way. So that's our introduction to color of voice or tone. And Glenda's commenting yellow-throated vireo has a shorter range. I think you mean like the amplitude. It's a little less complex, if that's what you mean. I think it doesn't have quite the range from the lowest note to the highest note. I think that's what you mean, Glenda. And I agree with that. So that's the color of voice, the tone. Basically, how musical does it sound? How pleasant is it to the ear? And so that's kind of step one. Now that we've done that, I want to move over. I don't know if you felt that was hard work, but we're going to keep working here. I'm going to talk about patterns. I'm going to introduce that second element by patterns. And basically pattern is really how the notes are, how many different notes are in that vocalization that you're hearing. And, is there one note that's repeated to basically one note? Are there two notes? Are there three? Once you get beyond, 3 or 4, it can actually be hard to hear how many different notes there are. And a song goes from simple to complex. But I would say we can hear the difference. You can judge what is a simple song versus a complex song if you just take the time and listen to it. And I'm going to give you an example of a song here by this familiar bird, familiar to many of us in urban and suburban areas, the house sparrow. This is the male. The male is a very vigorous singer. When he sings, he puts his whole self into it. But I'm going to play it, and I'm going to just ask you to listen and try to concentrate on how many different notes there are. By that, I mean, not how many notes there are total, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like actually how many sounds he makes over the course of the whole thing, but how many different notes there are. So is there just one note is it like monotonous, or are there two notes like da 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 da, or are there more? Let me play it first, and I think you'll see what I mean. Okay, so it sounds like he's going da 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 da. It's kind of like he's going between two different notes, kind of back and forth, and then at the end, towards the end, he introduces a third note, and he goes between like the second and the third one. Let me do that. Let me play that again. So it's like 1, 2, 1, 2, 2, 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3, 3, 3, like that. That's what we call a simple song. And it's kind of sad because when you see the house sparrow singing, he's putting so much effort. You thought, geez, if he had more notes, it should sound like much more musical, but it's not very musical, and yet he's putting so much of himself into it. But it's a pleasant enough song. But that's what I'd call a simple song. Basically, that's how I define it. There isn't much to it. It's fairly straightforward. Now I'm gonna add another element. I'm gonna start combining elements here. I told you I would do that. I would add layers. And so I'm going to compare these two birds here, the chipping sparrow and the pine warbler. And both of them, well, the chipping sparrow certainly breeds very commonly in suburban areas in southern Ontario. In Ontario, it's actually a super abundant bird in Ontario as a breeder, and also across Canada. Pine warbler is more restricted to eastern North America. Both of these birds have basically an identical pattern. So in terms of complexity, they're like the same. And why is that? Well, both of them have a song that's called a trill. And a trill is basically a one note song. It's one note repeated many times. And what does that look like? It's a staccato, basically. If you've taken music, it looks like this. So from left to right, it's one note, basically a pulsing sound. So it's not even like the house sparrow where it's like it's just like and that's it. It's like the most basic song. It's a trill. But it's so common really in bird song that it has this name, trill. So both of these birds make a trill. Now, so I'm telling you, it's as simple as it gets. But they have a different quality. We talked about tone and voice already. So simple song, different quality. I'm going to play both of them. First the chipping sparrow, then the pine warbler, and listen for that note. Listen. I think you'll notice it has just one note being repeated over time. But then let's compare the vocal quality, that color of voice of the two species. So first the chipping sparrow. Okay. The chipping sparrow, pulsing, and now the pine warbler, also pulsing, but let's give it a listen. Okay. All right. Which one would you say is more musical? Which one would you say is less musical? If you could. I can play them again. I'll play them just one and then the other. You can use the chat if you want to. Tell me what you think. Chipping sparrow. One more time, chipping sparrow. Okay. And I'll play the pine warbler. Okay. I'm seeing some different comments here. Kathy is saying pine warbler is more musical, sweeter sounding. Ganesh is saying also pine warbler more musical. Glenda is saying pine warbler is more complex. It could be. You're really listening keenly. Now, just one point is that both of these have, they both make trills, and even each species can vary the frequency. Like it can have a more drawn out space notes, like da 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 da, or they can be the brrr, with much closer notes. Both of them can do that. They can be more spaced or more dense. The chipping sparrow, I haven't seen anyone actually describe the chipping sparrow in the chat, but it's described as a dry trill. So it's pulsing. It's kind of a little bit of musical. It's a little bit musical, but it's dry and just there's less voice to it. Brrr. The pine warbler is more musical. It's described as more musical. It's fuller. It's almost like the rose-breasted grosbeak compared to the robin. The pine warbler also has that fuller sound compared to the chipping sparrow. One other thing you might have noticed, pine warbler kind of has this ringing. It's kind of like the old-fashioned. Those of us who remember what phones used to look like, a telephone, that you hang up like this, it kind of lax. It becomes lax towards the end. I'll just play them both one more time. Chipping sparrow just once. And pine warbler. There we go. And I'm saying Ammonia is also saying pine a little more musical. Avira saying I agree. Anuj, pine warbler is more so. Nadia, pine warbler. Navira, pine warbler sounds more musical. Yep. Allison says so. Leanne saying chipping sparrow less musical. Pine warbler increased at the end. That's might be what that the volume is increasing. That might be part of it. And then it has a kind of ringing. So Melissa saying that pine warbler reminds me of a car alarm. Pine warbler, Heather says pine warbler has a vibrato-like sound. Heather, yeah, and Navira, sparrow sounds more mechanical. Ooh, that's a good one. Exactly, that's a very good word. You know, not necessarily so scientific, but it's more mechanical, dry, just kind of. It's the sound is happening, but it isn't kind of meant to be necessarily sweet sounding. So very good word. That's a great word. So we're listening, and it's important. These two species, they're not in exactly the same habitat, but they can be right beside each other. Like chipping sparrow is more like open terrain with some evergreen trees in it, often by a parking lot. Pine warbler is in tall, mature pine trees, but you can have them singing in the same tree. So this is why it's a good thing. Eileen is saying chipping sparrow sounds sharper. Yep. Pine warbler has a more fading in and out sound. So there's more of an alternating volume, I guess, is maybe what how I would describe it, what you're saying. So yeah, so exactly. So we're all just starting to using the words, starting to use the language, and you can hear that difference if we take the time. So now I'm going to add another layer here. Not so much of complexity, but I'm going to add an element that I didn't really say we would do. It's just math, basically counting. Counting can be important in describing bird sound and in actually learning it and remembering it. By counting, I mean if we're talking about songs with certain notes in it, in some songs, in many songs actually, some sounds within that song are made a certain number of times consistently, or more or less consistently, and you can hear them distinctly enough, all those individual sounds within that song, that you can actually count them. And these two birds here offer a great example of using your very basic math skills in interpreting and in just identifying birds. The northern mockingbird and brown thrasher here, they're both about the size of your American robin, sort of American robin blue jay size. They're both in the same family, which is the mimids or mimic thrushes, they're called. And they're called mimids or mimic thrushes because they imitate in their songs, they incorporate sounds of other birds and even other like mechanical objects that they hear, like car sirens and different things that they're hearing in their environment. They incorporate these sounds into their songs. But the trick is with both of these that they make the sounds that they're imitating a certain number of times. And they're different enough, both of these birds, the number of times they repeat those imitated sounds is different enough that you can distinguish both of these birds from each other. So if you don't see them and you're just hearing one, you can distinguish them just by hearing them. So I'm going to play the northern mockingbird. The northern mockingbird, supreme mimic. I'm going to play this. Some of you who are maybe more experienced with birding by ear will be able to recognize the bird sounds that they're imitating. So here's the northern mockingbird. Listen, get a sense of it, and then try counting the number of sounds it's the repetitions that it's making of each sound that it's imitating. Here we go. Northern mockingbird. Okay. Interesting song, right? It's a great one. Now I'm going to play the brown thrasher. Okay. Do we have a sense now? So the mockingbird and the thrasher are both imitating other birds. They're both repeating sounds that they make a certain number of times. There's a bit of variation sometimes, but if you want to put in chat, I'd ask, you're welcome to tell me, on average, how much is the northern mockingbird repeating each sound? How many repetitions does it make of each sound? Do you want to tell me in the chat? I'm seeing, just waiting for some answers before I read them all out. There's no right or wrong answer. It's just a sense of like the range of number of times it's imitating. And I can play them again. I'll start the mockingbird here again. Okay, brown thrasher. Okay, so I'm seeing some answers here. BW saying 4 to 6 times for the northern, also for the mockingbird 4 to 6 times. Eileen's also saying that. I'm seeing Amelia saying northern mockingbird 4 to 6 times. Brown thrasher 2 times. Natalia saying 3 to 5 for the mockingbird and 2 for the thrasher. Ganesh is saying thrasher 3. Anuj is saying mockingbird 5, thrasher 2. Yeah, thereabouts. I mean, the mockingbird, for many of the sounds is like 5 or 6 times, sometimes 4. The thrasher was, usually 2, sometimes 3. So the average might be like 2.25 times per sound. Mockingbird, yeah, maybe an average of 5.5, maybe just 5 or 5.2, something like that. So yeah, so there's different numbers of times that they each imitate other sounds or make those repetitions. So it takes some concentration. You might have had to concentrate, like, oh, I really have to listen. Yeah, you do. But that's an important thing when you're birding by ear and it's something like I don't recognize. That's just listening intently. Is there any repetition at all in this that I can take away from this? And that's one skill you can employ, just counting. So just on that note, I'm going to show you maybe a surprise bird for some of you where math is really kind of important. And I'm going to play this song, a beautiful bird that a lot of people love to see in spring migration, especially. It does breed in Southern Ontario, commonly in the right habitat, even in the city of Toronto, in the Don Valley. If you go to the right spot, they're always there. They're breeding in the city of Toronto. So this is a song that I'll play it first. As you listen to it, try and pull some of that language we've been working on. Is it simple, complex? Is it musical and clear, pleasant? Is it a bit rough or coarse? Is there any repetition? How many distinct notes are there? Is there any repetition in that? And just give this one a listen. This is a nice bird. Okay, I'm gonna do it one more time. And as I play it, I'm gonna put up some words that are often used to describe, that can be used to describe the song. Okay. Quick, hurry, get some water. Let me put it out. So it's a, So I've sort of given it away that there's obviously repetition in this. To me, it sounds like I would describe it, and you may have your own words. If you have your words, put them in the chat. I would say it's musical, it's pleasant, it's not completely smooth. There's a bit of a roughness to it. It's so it's like shrill sounding, but pleasant, bouncy. The phrases, short phrases. It's it's like there's a small number of phrases repeated 2 or 3 times. So when I hear it's like fire, fire, quick, quick, hurry, hurry, get some water, put it out. Fire, fire, hurry, hurry, quick, quick, get some water, put it out. And it goes on and on and on and on for 5 minutes and 35 seconds, usually on top of a tree. On the very top of a tree, it flies away to another tree and does the same thing. Kate is saying it sounds cute. That is a good description. It's kind of a cute sound, yeah. It sounds like it's delightful. It's just cute. And I'll start playing it again. It might surprise you who's making this sound. This sound with repeating elements in it, of 5 notes each repeated once. Musical, shrill, pleasant, cute. Allison thinks it sounds sharp. Yes, sharp. Yeah. And that's who made it. The beautiful male indigo bunting. Sometimes he's not easy to see his color. If he's high in the tree against the light, he can look just black. But nice bird. A fairly simple song. 5 notes isn't complex, but it has those repeating elements, so you can count them. Try and count them again here. The notes are like 2 to 3 times. A wonderful bird. So we're just bringing all these elements in, and some songs are very complex. On the other hand, indigo bunting's sort of simple complex. It's complex in some ways, simple in other ways. Some birds, like this bird, the bobolink, have songs that almost defy description. I'm going to play it here. Who wants to describe this one in the chat? Huh. It sounds robotic plus startling. Malfunctioning cute robot, perhaps. Classic video game, squeaky robotic arcade game. Yeah, it sounds it sounds kind of, I guess, kind of mechanical, musical, explosive, kind of bubbly, effervescent, like something's exploding, or like bubbles are exploding out of something, like putting vinegar on baking soda, and then it kind of just dies. It just becomes quiet. Sometimes the best descriptions we have. Natalia said it, R2D2. Exactly. This is the R2D2 bird, the bobolink, just like malfunctioning R2D2, who's getting fried when he sticks his finger where he's not supposed to be. So digital, a little like chiptune. I don't know what chiptune is, but so you see, there's a lot of fun you can have with bird sound. All right, and now I'm going to tie in that last element, is pitch. We've been talking about color of voice. We've been talking about patterns, simple versus complex, sweet, less sweet, musical, less musical. Now we're going to talk about pitch, and that is, we're going to concentrate now on describing like where the song goes. So from the beginning of the song to the end of the song, does the pitch go up? Does it go from low to high or high to low over the course of that? Because in many songs, the pitch varies regularly from the beginning to the end. It goes a certain way, down to up, or high notes to low notes. And a great example to compare is these two birds, the Swainson's thrush and the veery. They're both birds that come through in migration. The veery breeds in southern Ontario in mature, moist, very damp forests. Swainson's thrush breeds in the boreal forest, but it's a regular migrant in southern Ontario. Both of these birds, they're both thrushes. The veery is a thrush, despite its one-word name. They both are like siblings or cousins. They both have, you might say, almost the same voice. These thrushes have a very musical song, very beautiful. It's described as ethereal, magical, mysterious, mystical. They almost are like the same bird, but singing a different song, because the voice is that it has that ABBA quality. It's just like, that's a thrush, but they both vary in the way their song goes from beginning to end. I'm going to play the Swainson's thrush and then the veery, and just listen, and focusing first on where the song is starting. Determine if the song is going up in pitch or down in pitch over the course of each song. Okay, here's the Swainson's thrush. One more time, Swainson's thrush. Very beautiful, right? And here's the veery. Okay. Does anyone want to say in the chat which one goes up and which one goes down? Can you tell that? Oh, I'm not gonna. Yeah. Ganesh is saying Swainson's goes up, veery down. Eileen saying Swainson's up, veery down. Olivia says veery down. Judy saying Swainson's up, veery down. Looks like we have agreement so far on that. And you know, one way, Allison is agreeing. That's great. I like it when people agree with me. But no, the songs speak for themselves. Really, they just go one way or the other. And just, you know, visually, maybe if this helps some of you, is the Swainson's thrush. To me, it sounds like an upward spiral. So in time from left to right on this graph that I created, it kind of goes up in steps and spirals. It goes up and up and up. And I'll play the song along with it. It's kind of swirling upwards, taking steps and swirling each step of the way. Okay. And the veery, and actually the name veery comes from the veery, going downwards. And it sounds like this. Cascading, spiraling down like waterfalls going over rocks. Like that. See that? I'll play it one more time, the veery. Like that. Yeah. And Abir is saying it sounds like those arcade video games over music. Glenda's saying veery is bubbly and busy. Yeah, actually, the veery does sound, I would say, maybe fuller, maybe somewhat more musical. Very good. But I hope you can see that, yeah, if we're stopping listening, one is going up, one is going down. So those are things that we can hear if we're just concentrating. All right, so that was our introduction to just language around bird sound, rough, musical, simple, complex, repetition, all these different things that we have at hand. And we just have to kind of stop and listen, and we'll hear them. So I'm going to give some tips and tricks here quickly with devices that might help you learn and incorporate bird sound, bird song specifically, into your birding repertoire. And so these things that help us remember are called mnemonic devices, which is basically a trick to help you remember something. And I'm going to show a few different types of mnemonic devices. Some of them we've already looked at. For example, there's the one kind is called the species to species association. We talked about the scarlet tanager here in the beginning, and we said it's like basically a robin with a sore throat. And you'll remember it sounds like this, like that. So basically comparing the bird that you're trying to learn to the one that you're already familiar with. That's a great way. It sounds like this, but it's different than that. How is it different than that? So robin with a sore throat. Another device is what we call an acoustic analogy, which is basically comparing the sound you're hearing to an everyday object or other sound. The belted kingfisher here makes a sound which is like a rattling sound. It's described as a baby's rattle. Now, I don't think babies these days are using a baby's rattle. I haven't seen one lately, but I guess the old-fashioned rattles sounds like this. All right. Maybe you have another description for that. If you have one, please put it in the chat. I'd like to hear that. Another device is the transliteration. What that means is you're basically taking the sound and you're putting words to it. And the words don't necessarily mean anything. It doesn't, you're not actually translating the song or what the song means, like what the bird is trying to say, but it's helping us remember the most distinctive elements of the song. One really good example is this bird here, the eastern towhee. The male has this very beautiful song. It's a simple song, musical, a little bit shrill, and it sounds like he's saying, "Drink your tea." All right, got that? Drink your tea. Maybe there's another descriptor that you have. I'm just going back to the belted kingfisher. Eileen is saying it sounds also like chipmunk scolding, or Olivia's saying like sounds like a squirrel scolding. Leanne's also saying like a chipmunk scolding. So English translations for these transliterations. The yellow warbler has one, which is, I'll play the song, one of the songs that the male yellow warbler makes. Now, earlier, when I started seriously birding in the field when I was 14, the sound that was the description for this song that was given to me was "sweet, sweet shredded wheat." But I didn't like that because for me, shredded breaks the flow. It sounds like it's flowing nicely, and "sweet, sweet shredded wheat" kind of breaks that flow. I don't feel that "sweet, sweet shredded wheat" really fits. It sounds like there's more in there, more syllables in there that the bird's trying to say. So for me, I'm like, I don't like that personally. I also saw this one. "Sweet, sweet, I'm so sweet," which same thing. I didn't really like it. I have to say, it didn't resonate with me because it doesn't flow. "Sweet, sweet, I'm so sweet." The "I'm" breaks it. For me, I just listened, and then the one I liked is this one, my personal favorite. "Sweet, sweet, sweeter than sweet." The sweeter kind of makes it go all together there, in my opinion. The fun thing with these is you can just make your own. You can make them up, you can improve them. And I'll give an example of an improvement. I had a friend of mine come on one of my bird walks once. She's a writer. She's always looking for words and always listening and finding new ways. And this bird, the red-eyed vireo, one of the most abundant forest songbirds in eastern North America, and it has quite a wide range across Canada as well. And it's often up in the canopy, out of view. It's in the leaves. It has a red eye, but you rarely see it because you can rarely even see the bird properly. It's always up there, out of reach. And so one of the fun phrases that is used, "I'm up here, you're down there. I'm up here, you're down there." And it's kind of like the bird is talking to you, because that's basically what it's saying. "I'm up here, you're down there." And my friend's like, "Justin, you know what? That's okay, but there's something else I'd like to add to this." And I'm gonna show you what she added, and I love it. And that's basically because whenever you're trying to see a red-eyed vireo, it is doing it's almost like it's doing its best to ensure you're not going to see it. So you can't see me. I'm up here. You're down there. You can't see me. I don't care. And that was a great improvement. I love this so much. I've kept that. You can feel free to use this. I would be happy if you would. So we've looked at bird vocalizations, describing them. I gave you a couple of devices that are perfectly legitimate. It's perfectly legitimate to say that bird sounds like a car horn or whatever it is. Just ways for help you remember. Whatever helps you remember, feel free to use it. I thought I'd quickly share a few learning resources that I have used that I think are great and others have used and told me that they like. These two I used when I was in my early teens. My birding mentor had these playing in the car on this CD player. These were CD-ROMs that they're probably super hard to find, but if you still have a CD player, especially in your car, you can play these while you're driving and actually listen to these. Birding by Ear and More Birding by Ear offers you tutorials, narrated tutorials, where different bird sounds that are often similar to each other are compared. Much like I described the robin and the grosbester's grosbeak, the narrator takes problem bird sounds that are very similar, and he describes them using language, using everyday words. And then he says, listen to this point or listen to this quality. And then later you get quizzes where he'll just play the sounds and you have to identify them. And this can be really helpful because he's really helping you focus on those similar sounding songs. So if you can find these two, used maybe on Amazon, I would say go for them. If you have a CD player, these are really helpful. As I said, you can listen to them while you're driving, which makes it great, efficient use of your time. And another one that was recommended to me by someone I know. Oh, I'm seeing Olivia saying Urban Nature Store carries the Birding by Ear. She's put it in the chat. So if you go to the chat, you can see the link. This is really good. Thank you, Olivia. At bottom, there's another one, The Beginner's Guide to North American Bird Sound, that one of our past webinar attendees told me about. So I'm including that here. Beginner's Guide to North American Bird Song by John Neville, who lives out in Vancouver, nevillerecording.com. You can find it there. Another resource, which is more recent, is the Peterson Field Guide to Bird Sounds of Eastern North America. There's also another one I'll show you. Now, the Peterson Field Guide to Bird Sounds of North America, it takes off from where this field guide started. Some of you have this bird guide. This is my first bird field guide, the Golden Guide, as we just called it, the Golden Guide. And inside the Golden Guide, it had, with all the species, these sonograms. You see here, this little graph here beside the name Northern Cardinal. Here you have another one. And these sonograms were supposed to help you to describe the most common sounds that the birds are making or their songs. Now, I am musical, so I can kind of look at these and figure out how the sound is going. And there was a bit of a description in the beginning of the field guide telling you how to use the sonogram, but I just didn't do that. I didn't look at that. And it takes certain skill and discipline to figure these things out. Now, this was the section in that book that was describing these. And so it's showing them and telling you how to read them. And presumably you can learn bird songs. When you hear it, you can relate it to the sonogram and learn it. Now, what this Peterson's field guide is doing is pretty spectacular. And also now there's the same guide for Western birds of Western North America. You don't get that. What it's doing inside is it is taking each bird species in North America and it is laying out the sonograms of all the fairly common vocalizations that each bird is making. And so you have, the American robin has a song. It has different kinds of songs. Simple song, it has the complex song, all these different call notes for different scenarios, like alarm notes and such. It's telling you what these vocalizations are doing or what they seem to serve, what function they seem to serve. And it lays them out. Now, in the beginning of the book, it has a very good section on how to interpret these sonograms. So it takes time to look at it, really sink in. But the fun part of this book is that it actually has, I'm going to see, I might not have it here. Peterson, if you go to petersonbirdsounds.com, you will find the online library to all of the songs in this book. The same sounds. So you can look at the sounds in the book, then go online to petersonbirdsounds.com, and it will you can actually listen to the sound and look at the sonogram at the same time, and then you can figure out, okay, that's how to read, that's what that sonogram, what that graphic means. And so you can do this even if you don't have the book, by the way. You just want to go listen to the different bird sounds of the American sounds of the American robin or the scarlet tanager or whatever. PetersonBirdSounds.com. You can just, in fact, search Peterson Field Guide to Bird Sounds of Eastern North America, and you can find this library. But it's PetersonBirdSounds.com. I'm pretty sure. I'm just going to double check. I think my link disappeared here, and it is okay. I might have that wrong, but if you just search that, you'll be able to find that library there, and you'll find it's quite useful. So and I apologize that somehow my link seems to have disappeared from my PowerPoint. In any event, you should find it online. Now, that's one resource. Another resource that is really helpful that people have told me has helped them a lot is LarkWire. LarkWire is an online. Oh yeah, thank you. Olivia has plugged it in. It's the Peterson Bird Sounds. You'll find it there in the chat. Thank you so much, Olivia, for that. And LarkWire here, larkwire.com has basically an app that you can download. It also has a web version, which is super easy and fun because you can just do it on your desktop. And you'll see why. I'll show you here why it's very helpful. If you go to larkwire.com/web, and it's basically an online tutorial for learning bird sounds, mostly bird songs. And what it does, I'm going to share the screen. I'm going to move to my browser here to share the screen here, and you'll see it in just a moment. Where is my browser? There we go. Okay, I'm going to share my screen here. So you basically go here and you have this tutorial. It'll have different sound packs that you can get, and it has games. Now I'll show you what it looks like in general. We can try it now. You can actually try this online, and I'm going there right now. And so what it does, it groups together automatically similar sounding songs. For example, here we have the yellow warbler, black-capped chickadee, and American robin. Here at the right, you'll see I have it checked off here, this checkbox, clear tone songs. I can also include if I want songs with rough notes. But I think this is the trial version. It might not let me do that. But just to show you how this works, I can see the species. I can also view descriptions in words of the sounds that they make. So American robin, for example, extended song is caroling rhythm, cheer up, cheerily, cheer up, cheerily, like that. Or I can just go and see the birds. Now what it's going to do, it lets you play this game where it'll compare these. It'll play these and let you identify them. So here we go. Start. Sweet, sweet, sweeter than sweet. What bird is that? What do you think? I think that's a yellow warbler. Oh, and it gave me green because we got it right. Cheer up, cheerily, cheer up. Now I'm going to select the American robin. Oh, I got it right. Oh, another sound. What is that? Sounds like the American robin again, and it is. Oh, I got it correct. Sounds like a whistled phoebe, and that's the black-capped chickadee. Got it. Oh, there's another. I don't think that's a black-capped chickadee. Wait, I think it's the yellow warbler. Aha. I got it wrong. You see what happened? So the program actually figures out where you're weak and where you're strong. Actually, I knew it was the chickadee, but just to illustrate, we chose the yellow warbler. The program has now figured out that you have a hard time distinguishing between black-capped chickadee and yellow warbler. And as we continue this game, it will increase the frequency of those two songs until you get it right, until you have no mistakes. There's no mistaking those two species. So it applies sort of, I think this is called machine learning. And has different levels. You can do beginner, intermediate, advanced, or expert. If you want, you can even say, even if you're a beginner, you can select expert. And if you start getting, plenty of them wrong, that you're actually not an expert, the program will figure out you're not an expert. And without telling you, you're actually a beginner. It'll just redistribute the sounds, and without hurting your feelings, it will take you gently down to beginner again and help you build back up your skills. A lot of people tell me that this program really helps them, especially with warming up their ears in April, like before spring migration. So you can go online, try the demo here, larkwire.com/web. And if you like it, you'll have different sound packs you can get, and you'll have a lot more categories. Here it's just showing you clear tone sound songs with rough notes. You'll have many more categories. You can do just one category at a time or mix and match, and you can have a lot of fun with this. And people tell me it works. It really works. So that's one that you can try on your own time. So I'm just going to go back to my main screen here and to my PowerPoint. So try larkwire.com, have a look. And if you want to do the app, I haven't used the app myself, but you can try that, and you can see how that works for you. So birding by ear, how to do it. Everyone does it in their own style, at their own pace. You use birding by ear for whatever your purpose or your interest is. If you're a competitive birder, it's a great tool to rack up, to have a big bird list on a certain day or in a certain month if you want to do that. It can just be a way to enjoy and find birds more easily. It's just kind of fun to walk through the woods and be like, that is the scarlet tanager, there's the robin with the sore throat. It just adds a different element of enjoyment. So how to do it? Just get out there, listen, try and describe the sounds and the songs and the calls that you're hearing, and have fun with it. And just make the habit of stopping and listening. If you hear something you don't recognize, don't walk away. Stay there and listen. Just listen and try to describe it for yourself. Now, these days, there is the Merlin app that you can use, which is basically an app you put on your phone, and it'll listen to the environment for you, and it will suggest species for you. It'll say, oh, that might be such and such, or it'll tell you all the sounds it's hearing. And it's possible one of those is the bird you don't know. So I have mixed feelings about it, but I think it can help you to learn that sound, because initially when you heard it, you didn't recognize it. So as long as you learn it, that's the important thing. Use those tricks and shortcuts that I talked about. Describe it. Use words, funny phrases, acoustic analogies like the baby's rattle, whatever it is, and just practice. Just go out there, repeat. Go out there, repeat. Make a habit of doing it, and have a lot of fun while you're doing it. So thank you so much for your attention and for joining us for this birding by ear session. I really hope that you'll have fun with birding by ear. If it's something that's new to you, just go and do it. If you like doing it already, just keep doing more of it. And I would like to thank Olivia and the Toronto Bird Celebration, hosted by Birds Canada, for inviting me to do this session. And I hope to see you out in the field. If there are any questions, I can take them.
Justin, what an engaging talk. Thank you so much for showing us all those resources and offering so many fun tidbits of information. I know I'll be playing those mnemonics myself as I walk through the woods. I'm going to invite people to use the Q&A. If you have questions for Justin, we'll find them there. And in the meantime, Justin, is there a bird that always tricks you with the sound? Like, is there one that's particularly difficult to learn?
Is there one that's difficult to learn? It's funny. There are birds that sound very similar, as I said. For example, the yellow warbler has a certain song that sounds a lot like one of the songs of the chestnut-sided warbler. They're both warblers. They're different enough. Like, some of the songs are different enough that like clearly it's this or that. But sometimes they can be very similar, and you do need to concentrate. And sometimes, I need to see the bird. I need to try and find it. And I'll have a feeling like that's, no, it's a chestnut-sided warbler. It's a tricky one. And then I'll see it, and it'll be an affirmation from me, like, yes, I got that one. Some of them are tricky, and you just have to stop. Another pair of similar sounding warblers that are different enough, but they're similar, are the northern parula and the cerulean warbler. If you have a lot of experience with them, it'll be a piece of cake. If I really concentrate, I'll tell the difference, but it does take, I do have to stop. I do have to stop, listen. Oh, they're both going up like this. But yeah, the cerulean warbler is just a little bit of a different quality to it. And so there are those ones. And then it comes, we get the chip notes, like just the simple contact notes that birds make. Once again, warblers, there's some that are very, very distinctive, that have very distinctive call notes, like the yellow rumped warbler, the yellow warbler, the American redstart is a warbler. You have the northern water thrush is very distinctive, but some of them are very similar. The northern water thrush and the prothonotary warbler are in this very similar habitat or same habitat. They both have very similar call notes, just chip notes. So it's like chip, and you have to look. Like I have to look. So it's actually work. It's work to do this sometimes, and some of them, I still have to do it. I still have to concentrate, and that's kind of the fun part. It's like, there's always something to learn, and we're never quite done learning, and that's what birding by ear is really like what makes that fun for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like every time I go out, I become more aware, I'm more in tune with what's going on, and that knowledge continues to build. So it's such a fun journey to be on. We have a couple of questions in the Q&A. Thank you for sharing such great tips and resources. Can you please identify other bird species in mockingbird and thrasher songs?
Oh, yes. So in the mockingbird recording, there's blue jay, there's wood thrush. Those are ones, and there's, I think, American robin. The thrasher, I can't remember offhand. I'd have to go back. That's many slides back. But but the wood thrush is one that definitely stands out to me, and the blue jay. Those are two that stand out. So someone is asking, are there any sounds you can make to coax the birds to come closer to you? Yes, there are. It's a sensitive thing. I mean, birds respond to sounds of their own species because, especially males, they're territorial. So it's an important point. I'll make it now. I'll just make it something called playback, playing back the sound like from your phone of a bird recording. Some people do that. It is not a good practice to do when you're in, when birds are breeding, because it makes a bird think that there's another bird of its kind that's competing for it. That can take the bird away from its nest, from its young, from its other duties. So you're basically sort of faking another bird for it. So that it can work. It is not something you should practice in breeding season. So that's just a caution I'll make to you. Sometimes birds will respond in the fall, especially late summer and the fall when birds are flocking. There are some sounds that you can make that attract birds, so you can see them. They're not even bird sounds. They're just really pishing sounds, like making a p and a sh and a flutter of your lips. Can attract groups of birds that are curious, like what is that sound that they're hearing? So there are sounds that you can make safely for the birds in certain times of the year that you can see them. Someone is asking me, why do I have mixed feelings about Merlin? Merlin, I have mixed feelings because a lot of us who started birding by ear before the age of Merlin, we had to work, we had to just learn the birds. And Merlin is basically helping you identify the birds before you even see them, or you may not even hear the sound that the Merlin is identifying. So it helps you find birds more easily. It doesn't necessarily help you see them more easily. But I've seen it in practice this year in the field. I actually had some bird walks I was leading in Point Pelee this spring, where I had few people using Merlin. They were on my walk, and they were using Merlin to hear the birds. And I heard like a white-throated sparrow sound once, like a note, which is fairly distinctive. And one of the participants said, "Oh, there's a white-throated sparrow here." And I said, "Yeah, there is." And did you see it or did you hear it? She said, "No, Merlin heard it. Merlin heard it." And like, oh, that's funny because I heard it once. I heard it make one note. But it's like sometimes you hear birds once and like, did I really hear the white-throated sparrow? But I'm hesitant leading a walk to tell people there's a white-throated sparrow here because I heard it only once. Like I like to hear the bird sound a few times so that it's like, okay, well, let's try and see where it is. Maybe it'll pop up. So sometimes Merlin is detecting those sounds out there where it's just scarcely audible to the human ear. And so, but I had the affirmation. Someone told me, someone on one of those people said, "Oh, you're better than Merlin." I'm like, "Oh, good." I feel better because I heard the sound before, before she told me that Merlin heard it. So I still have my hearing, thankfully. Um, so yeah, so Merlin, I just haven't used it. I'll give you an example of where Merlin can be wrong. It depends on the sounds of the environment. So our office at Quest Nature Tours is in downtown Toronto, King Street East. And the predecessor of Merlin was called BirdNet. It was when Merlin was just new. That technology has been fused into the Merlin app. It didn't used to have that sound recognition app. Anyway, so when BirdNet was out first, I heard white-throated sparrows behind my office in spring migration. I thought, let me test BirdNet to see if it's detecting the white-throated sparrows, and it could not detect them. And I think the reason was there's so much city noise, like ambient noise of traffic and everything, it couldn't detect it. Now, it said, we can't identify the sound, but we suggest it might be wild turkey. I thought, how in the world is it detected wild turkey in Toronto? I'm certainly not hearing wild turkey. And that's because our office on King Street, I was behind our office building, and our office is facing on King Street, and there's streetcars rolling by. And the streetcars, when they come by, they rumble. They make everything kind of rumble. And I think it heard that rumbling, and it's like the wild turkeys sound. And it heard that, and it suggested you might be hearing a wild turkey. So it was being fooled by the streetcar into thinking there was a wild turkey. So now that technology is vastly improved. That was like 4 years ago, I think. But yeah, so it's not always right, but it's impressive. It really is impressive. So I say try it. And what it is good for is that it's making you aware. It's making the user aware of how much bird sound there is. You might be hearing like northern oriole and indigo bunting and rose-breasted grosbeak. You might be in your neighborhood. You might have these birds and never even have noticed them. But Merlin is so sensitive; it might be telling you they're here, and that will give you, I hope, if anything, I hope it'll give you incentive to go like birding in your neighborhood, like in urban Toronto or wherever you are. You might find so many things you didn't even notice because of Merlin. So that's, I think, one of the benefits of Merlin. It's so super sensitive to whatever's in the environment. So
I find it's a really fun way to connect to your surroundings too. Like it's picking up so much, and it just generates excitement as you're watching that screen light up. So for
yes,
me, it pulls me into the present of birding, which is kind of fun
yes,
too.
yes, it's great.
Justin, do you have time for one more question?
Sure, I'll take one more question.
Okay, what does the mockingbird slash thrasher mimic the sound? Why does the mockingbird slash thrasher mimic the sound of other birds?
Super question. I don't think we know the answer to that. It has been suggested for the mockingbird. I mean, the mockingbird isn't so different from the thrasher, but it's been suggested because the mockingbird, male and female, like they'll stay on territory and they'll defend a territory year round. Also, they defend their territories and things like their favorite fruit trees against other bird species. So it has been suggested that they're imitating other birds because, in a way, they're advertising to those species that, you know what, you're not welcome here either, that someone else is here of your own kind. That's a suggestion. I don't know if that really holds. I don't know if that's valid because there's a lot of birds that imitate other birds. A lot of birds imitate other birds. In fact, birds like the pine siskin, red-eyed vireo, for example, they imitate other birds. And we don't know why. Some birds we know, like warblers, can, well, here's one thing. The songbirds, most of the songbirds actually, the males learn their song by hearing their father singing, or the male of their species singing at a critical time when they're in their nest. Some warblers will mislearn their song. They'll learn the song of another warbler species, and they will sing that song for the rest of their lives. At a certain time, they didn't hear their father, they heard the other species, and it's just because they mislearned it at that critical time. So I'm not answering your question about the mockingbird. We don't know. We just don't really know what that why they do that. It's one of those great.
Sounds strange and fun.
It makes it fun.
Definitely. Oh, that's great. Okay, I think we're going to leave it there for tonight. Justin, thank you so much. This was so wonderful. And thank you also for taking the time to engage and answer some fantastic questions from the audience at the end there. Thank you to everybody who tuned in for finding us again this week and sticking with us through some technical difficulties. This has just been, yeah, so informative, so fun. And I know that you'll all go out with ears wide open for your birding this spring and summer. Big thank you to Birds Canada and Quest Nature Tours. There's a couple more events on the calendar. You can head to torontobirdcelebration.ca, and we'll be wrapping up the festival this Saturday at the Colonel Sam Smith Park Spring Bird Festival, where they're running free walks throughout the day, and hopefully we'll see some whimbrels. So join us there. Justin, have a great night. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.